Most people have heard of Atlantis, the legendary city said to be lost beneath the sea. But what if Atlantis was not the first great civilization? Some interpretations of the Emerald Tablets suggest that Thoth spoke of cultures that existed long before Atlantis ever rose, civilizations that possessed knowledge of the stars, advanced understanding of nature, and spiritual wisdom now forgotten. If Atlantis was already advanced, what kind of world existed before it? And why would Thoth mention these earlier ages at all? Ancient traditions often describe cycles: creation, destruction, and rebirth. Some believe Thoth preserved memories from these forgotten eras so humanity would not lose its way again. Tonight, we explore the idea that Atlantis may have been only one chapter in a much older story, and that the true history of civilization could be far deeper than we imagine. The legend of Atlantis begins with Plato, who described it as a mighty empire that rose in power and fell in arrogance. Yet even in his account, there is a sense that Atlantis was not the beginning, but part of a larger cycle. Thoth, the Egyptian god of wisdom, is said to have recorded memories of civilizations that came before, cultures that flourished in harmony with the cosmos and then faded into silence. These were societies that measured time by the stars, built temples aligned with celestial rhythms, and believed that wisdom was not just knowledge, but a way of living. Imagine a world where boredom was considered sacred, where patience was the highest virtue, and where silence was a form of worship. These pre-Atlantean civilizations, according to Thoth, valued balance above all else. They saw the universe as a rhythm, a slow turning of cycles, and they lived in harmony with that rhythm. Their cities were not built for speed, but for endurance. Their rituals not for spectacle, but for reflection. Atlantis, then, was not a singular marvel, but a continuation of something older. It was a bright flame in a long chain of civilizations, each rising, each falling, each leaving behind fragments of wisdom. The Emerald Tablets hint that Thoth preserved these memories deliberately so that humanity would remember the lessons of balance, humility, and renewal. And so, the legend of Atlantis is not just about a city swallowed by the sea. It is about cycles of history, forgotten civilizations, and wisdom that endures even when empires collapse. Atlantis captivates us because it is both a mystery and a mirror, reflecting our own longing for greatness and our fear of downfall. If you love mythology and history from all cultures and forbidden ancient stories, subscribe, because this channel reveals the secrets behind every myth. And let me know from where you're watching, whether it's from a cozy bed, a couch with snacks, or hiding under the blanket, pretending you're studying history when you're really just waiting to fall asleep. Atlantis is more than a story of a city swallowed by the sea. It is a symbol that has fascinated humanity for centuries. The reason it captivates us lies not only in its mystery, but in the way it reflects our deepest hopes and fears. Atlantis is the dream of perfection undone by arrogance, a reminder that greatness can be fragile, and a promise that hidden truths may still lie beneath the waves. Part of its allure comes from the balance between detail and ambiguity. Plato described Atlantis with remarkable specificity: its concentric rings of land and water, its temples, its fleets. Yet he left enough uncertainty to spark endless debate. Was he recounting history or crafting allegory? That tension between fact and myth keeps the story alive, inviting each generation to interpret it anew. Atlantis also captivates because it embodies the idea of a golden age, We imagine a civilization of wisdom and power, living in harmony with nature, only to fall when pride grew too great. This narrative resonates across cultures, echoing flood myths, tales of lost cities, and stories of downfall followed by renewal. Atlantis becomes a universal metaphor, reminding us that balance must be preserved or risk being undone. The mystery of Atlantis appeals to our longing for discovery. We wonder if ruins lie hidden beneath the ocean, if fragments of its wisdom survive in ancient texts, if its memory is encoded in myths across the world. The possibility that Atlantis might be real fuels exploration, while the symbolism of its story ensures it remains meaningful even if no ruins are ever found. Ultimately, Atlantis captivates us because it is both a cautionary tale and a source of wonder. It warns of the dangers of arrogance, yet it inspires dreams of hidden civilizations and forgotten wisdom. It is a legend that refuses to fade because it speaks not only of the past but of the timeless human desire to seek, to question, and to imagine. To understand the story of civilizations before Atlantis, we must first meet Thoth, the enigmatic figure who stands at the crossroads of myth, memory, and wisdom. In Egyptian tradition, Thoth was not simply a god, he was the embodiment of knowledge itself. Depicted with the head of an ibis, or sometimes as a baboon, he was the divine scribe, the keeper of records, the one who measured time and ensured that truth was preserved. Thoth was said to have invented writing, giving humanity the gift of language and the ability to record memory. He was the master of hieroglyphs, symbols that carried layers of meaning, and he was believed to have authored countless sacred texts. To the Egyptians, Thoth was the one who balanced the scales of justice, who guided souls in the afterlife, and who maintained harmony between the gods and the cosmos. But Thoth's role extended beyond Egypt. In later traditions, he became Hermes Trismegistus, a figure revered in Greek and Roman thought as the source of Hermetic wisdom. His teachings influenced philosophers, alchemists, and mystics for centuries, shaping ideas about the nature of reality, the cycles of history, and the pursuit of enlightenment. Thoth was also seen as a guardian of memory. He recorded the rise and fall of civilizations, ensuring that their lessons would not be lost. According to some interpretations of the Emerald Tablets, Thoth spoke of ages before Atlantis, cultures that flourished with knowledge of the stars and spiritual wisdom. His writings suggest that he preserved these memories deliberately, so that humanity could learn from the past and avoid repeating its mistakes. In this way, Thoth becomes more than a mythological figure. He is a symbol of continuity, a reminder that wisdom endures even when cities crumble. To study Thoth is to step into a tradition that values memory, balance, and truth, qualities that remain as relevant today as they were in the ancient world. In the vast tapestry of ancient traditions, few figures embody the role of memory as profoundly as Thoth. To the Egyptians, he was not merely a god of writing and wisdom. He was the guardian of truth, the one who ensured that nothing of importance would be forgotten. His presence was felt in every scroll, every inscription, every ritual where words carried power beyond their sound. Thoth's role as a keeper of memory was essential in a world where civilizations rose and fell, often leaving little behind but fragments. He was imagined as the divine scribe, recording the deeds of gods and men alike, preserving the balance of the cosmos through careful documentation. In myths, he stood beside the scales of justice, noting the weight of souls, ensuring that every life was remembered and judged fairly. But his memory extended beyond individuals. Thoth was said to have recorded the cycles of history, the creation of worlds, their destruction, and their rebirth. He preserved the wisdom of civilizations that had vanished, encoding their truths in symbols and texts that could survive catastrophe. In this way, Thoth became the bridge between ages, carrying forward lessons that might otherwise have been lost to time. The emerald tablets, attributed to him, reflect this devotion to memory. They speak of knowledge hidden until humanity is ready, of truths preserved through destruction, of wisdom waiting patiently for rediscovery. Thoth's words remind us that memory is not passive, it is active, deliberate, and sacred. To forget is to risk repeating mistakes, but to remember is to carry forward the light of understanding. In the story of Atlantis, Thoth's role as keeper of memory is crucial. If Atlantis was real, its downfall might have erased its wisdom forever. Yet, through Thoth, fragments of its story survived, not just as myth, but as a lesson encoded in tradition. He ensured that even when cities crumbled, their truths would endure, waiting for future generations to uncover them. Thus, Thoth is more than a figure of myth. He is a symbol of continuity, a reminder that memory is the thread that binds past to present, ensuring that wisdom is never truly lost. In the teachings attributed to Thoth, one theme appears again and again. The universe moves in cycles. Civilizations rise, flourish, and fall, only to be reborn in new forms. Time is not a straight line but a spiral, winding endlessly, carrying humanity through patterns of creation, destruction, and renewal. Ancient cultures across the world echoed this idea. The Egyptians spoke of ages ruled by different gods, each ending with upheaval before a new order began. The Hindus described vast cosmic cycles called yugas, where humanity passes through golden ages of wisdom and darker ages of decline. The Greeks imagined ages of gold, silver, bronze, and iron, each reflecting a shift in human virtue and balance. These traditions suggest that the ancients saw history not as progress toward a final goal, but as rhythms repeating across eternity. Thoth, as the keeper of memory, recorded these cycles so they would not be forgotten. He understood that destruction was not the end, but part of a larger pattern. Floods, fires, and earthquakes erased cities, but wisdom endured, waiting to be rediscovered. In his writings, the fall of Atlantis was not unique, but part of this eternal rhythm, a reminder that pride and imbalance inevitably lead to collapse, and that renewal follows in its wake. The idea of cycles also shaped how ancient people lived. They aligned their rituals with the turning of the stars, their calendars with the seasons, their myths with the rise and fall of ages. To them, balance was not optional but essential. Harmony with the cosmos meant survival. Arrogance meant downfall. For modern readers, the concept of cycles offers a different perspective on history. It suggests that civilizations are not simply advancing toward progress, but moving through repeating patterns. The story of Atlantis, framed by Thoth's wisdom, becomes not just a tale of one city, but a lesson about the rhythm of human existence. In the end, the idea of ancient cycles is both humbling and comforting. It reminds us that decline is not final, that renewal is always possible, and that wisdom survives even when empires fall. Atlantis may have been lost, but in the turning of cycles, its lessons endure. Throughout human history, countless civilizations have risen to brilliance, only to vanish, leaving behind ruins, fragments, and whispers in myth. These lost societies remind us that the story of humanity is far deeper than the records we keep, and that memory often survives in symbols rather than stone. Some of these civilizations are known only through archaeology. The Indus Valley culture, once thriving with advanced urban planning and trade, disappeared mysteriously, its script still undeciphered. The Olmecs of Mesoamerica left colossal stone heads but few written records, their wisdom preserved only in fragments passed to later cultures. Even mighty empires, like the Maya and the Khmer at Angkor, faded, their cities reclaimed by jungle, their knowledge scattered. Others survive only in legend. Troy was once thought to be a myth until its ruins were uncovered in the 19th century. Similarly, stories of El Dorado, Shambhala, and lands swallowed by desert or sea suggest that memory of lost civilizations lingers even when evidence is scarce. Atlantis itself belongs to this category, a city remembered not for its ruins but for its story, preserved in Plato's dialogues and echoed in traditions across the world. Thoth's role as the keeper of memory becomes vital here. He was said to preserve knowledge from civilizations that had vanished, encoding their wisdom in texts and symbols so that humanity would not forget. According to some interpretations, the Emerald Tablets hint at cultures before Atlantis, societies that flourished with knowledge of the stars and spiritual wisdom, now forgotten except in fragments. Civilizations lost to time remind us that greatness is fragile. Cities can be swallowed by floods, buried by sands, or consumed by forests, but their lessons endure if memory is preserved. They are warnings and inspirations, showing both the heights humanity can reach and the fragility of those achievements. In the end, these lost civilizations are not gone entirely. They live on in myths, in ruins, in traditions, and in the wisdom carried forward by figures like Thoth. They remind us that history is not only what we see, but also what we remember, and that the story of humanity stretches far deeper than we imagine. Long before the shining towers of Atlantis were said to rise, myths and traditions across cultures spoke of worlds that existed in ages even more ancient. These stories describe civilizations that flourished with wisdom, harmony, and knowledge of the stars, only to fade into silence, leaving behind fragments of memory preserved in myth. In Egypt, priests told of ages ruled by gods and demigods, epochs stretching thousands of years before the reign of mortal kings. These were times when humanity lived closer to the divine, guided by figures like Thoth, who recorded their deeds so they would not be forgotten. The Emerald Tablets hint at these forgotten ages, suggesting that civilizations before Atlantis possessed profound spiritual understanding and advanced knowledge of nature. In Mesopotamia, the Sumerians spoke of antediluvian kings who ruled for impossibly long spans of time before the Great Flood. Their lists of rulers, carved into clay, suggest a world of immense longevity and wisdom, a civilization that thrived before catastrophe reshaped the earth. Similarly, in India, the concept of Ugas describes vast cycles of ages, with golden eras of harmony preceding darker times of decline. Greek traditions also carried echoes of pre-Atlantean worlds. Hesiod's Ages of Man began with a golden age, when humans lived in peace, abundance, and closeness to the gods. This age ended giving way to silver, bronze, and iron, each reflecting a decline in virtue and balance. Atlantis, in this framework, was not the first golden age, but one of many cycles of rise and fall. Indigenous traditions across the Americas tell of lands destroyed by floods, fires, or earthquakes, with survivors carrying wisdom into new ages. These stories, though separated by geography, share a common theme. Civilizations existed before the ones we know, and their memory lingers in myth. Thoth's role as the keeper of memory ties these stories together. He is said to have preserved knowledge from these forgotten worlds, encoding their wisdom in symbols and texts so that humanity would not lose its way. The idea that Atlantis was only one chapter in a much older story suggests that human history is far deeper than we imagine, stretching back into ages where myth and memory intertwine. These stories of a world before Atlantis remind us that the past is not a straight line but a tapestry of cycles, each civilization rising, flourishing, and fading, yet leaving behind echoes that continue to shape our imagination. They are not simply tales of loss but of continuity, showing that wisdom endures even when cities vanish. Long before telescopes and modern observatories, ancient civilizations lifted their eyes to the heavens and found meaning in the stars. To them, the night sky was not a random scattering of lights, but a carefully ordered map, a cosmic script written by the divine. According to traditions linked to Thoth, the stars were more than distant fires. They were guides, teachers, and keepers of eternal rhythms. The Egyptians aligned their temples and pyramids with celestial events. The rising of Sirius, the brightest star, marked the annual flooding of the Nile, a cycle that sustained life and agriculture. This was not coincidence, but deliberate design, a way of harmonizing human life with cosmic order. Thoth, as the god of wisdom and measurement, was said to have recorded these alignments, ensuring that humanity would never lose its connection to the heavens. In Mesopotamia, priests studied the skies from the tops of ziggurats, tracking planetary movements and mapping constellations. They believed the stars reflected the fate of kings and empires, and that by reading the heavens, one could understand the cycles of history itself. Their clay tablets preserve some of the earliest star charts, evidence of a culture deeply attuned to celestial rhythms. India's traditions also carried profound astronomical wisdom. The Vedanga Jyotisha, one of the oldest texts on astronomy, described the movements of celestial bodies and their influence on rituals. The concept of vast cosmic ages, or yugas, was tied to the stars, suggesting that human history itself was part of a larger celestial cycle. For Thoth, the stars symbolized balance. They represented order in the cosmos, a harmony that civilizations were meant to reflect. To live in alignment with the stars was to live in truth. To ignore them was to risk imbalance and downfall. This perspective tied directly into the cycles of creation and destruction, with the heavens serving as reminders that all things move in rhythm. Knowledge of the stars was not only practical, but spiritual. Ancient cultures believed the cosmos was alive, that the stars were connected to divine forces, and that by studying them, humanity could glimpse the eternal. Atlantis, if it truly existed, may have inherited this celestial wisdom, building its society in harmony with cosmic rhythms. And if Atlantis fell, perhaps it was because its people forgot the lessons written in the heavens. When we look back at the civilizations that existed before Atlantis, one of the most striking features is their emphasis on spiritual wisdom. These cultures did not separate the material from the spiritual. Instead, they saw life as a unified whole, where every action, ritual, and symbol carried meaning beyond the physical world. According to traditions linked to Thoth, this wisdom was not simply about religion, but about understanding the deeper rhythms of existence. In Egypt, spiritual wisdom was woven into daily life. Temples were not just places of worship, but centers of learning, where priests studied astronomy, medicine, and philosophy alongside rituals. The concept of mat, balance, truth, and harmony guided both rulers and common people. To live in accordance with mat was to live in alignment with the cosmos itself. Thoth, so that humanity would not lose sight of its connection to the eternal. In Mesopotamia, spiritual wisdom was expressed through myths that explained the cycles of creation and destruction. The Epic of Gilgamesh reflects humanity's search for immortality and meaning, showing that even in the earliest civilizations, people wrestled with questions of life, death, and renewal. Rituals were designed not only to honor the gods, but to remind humanity of its place within the larger order of the universe. India's ancient traditions carried profound spiritual insights through the Vedas and later texts. These writings emphasized meditation, sacrifice, and the pursuit of knowledge as paths to understanding the divine. The concept of Uga's vast cycles of ages reflected the belief that humanity's spiritual state shifted over time, moving from harmony to decline and back again. For Thoth, spiritual wisdom was inseparable from memory. He recorded not only the deeds of kings and the rise of cities, but also the truths that guided civilizations. His teachings suggest that societies before Atlantis possessed a deep awareness of the spiritual dimension, living in harmony with cosmic rhythms and preserving wisdom through ritual and symbol. This spiritual wisdom is what makes early cultures so compelling. It reminds us that civilization is not only about technology or power, but about meaning, balance, and connection. Atlantis may have been advanced, but the civilizations before it carried truths that were timeless, truths that continue to resonate, guiding humanity toward harmony even in the modern age. In the story of civilizations, destruction is never the end. It is part of a larger rhythm, a cycle that clears the way for renewal. Ancient traditions, including those attributed to Thoth, emphasize that catastrophe is not random, but woven into the fabric of existence. Floods, fires, earthquakes, and storms may erase cities, but they also prepare the ground for new beginnings. The Egyptians believed that destruction was tied to imbalance. When harmony with Mat, the principle of truth and order, was broken, chaos followed. Yet chaos was not permanent. It was a force that demanded restoration. Temples and rituals reflected this understanding, reminding people that renewal always followed collapse. Thoth, as the keeper of memory, recorded these cycles so humanity would remember that even in ruin, wisdom could endure. In Mesopotamia, the great flood myth preserved in the Epic of Gilgamesh illustrates this principle. The flood destroyed much of humanity, but survivors carried forward knowledge and traditions, ensuring continuity. The catastrophe was devastating, but it also marked a rebirth, a chance to rebuild with greater awareness of the fragility of life. Indian traditions describe vast cycles of ages, or ugas, where humanity moves from harmony to decline and back again. Each age ends with destruction, but this destruction is necessary for renewal. The cycle ensures that wisdom is never lost entirely, even if civilizations fade. Atlantis itself, whether real or symbolic, embodies this theme. Its downfall was catastrophic, but the memory of its greatness survived. Through Plato's dialogues and Thoth's teachings, Atlantis became more than a lost city. It became a lesson about pride, imbalance, and the inevitability of renewal. The destruction of Atlantis ensured that its story would endure, guiding future generations. Destruction and renewal are not opposites, but partners. One clears the way, the other rebuilds. Ancient cultures understood this truth and encoded it in myths, rituals, and texts. For them, catastrophe was not meaningless tragedy, but part of the eternal cycle of balance. In the end, destruction reminds us of fragility, while renewal reminds us of resilience. Together, they form the rhythm of history, ensuring that wisdom survives even when empires fall. Atlantis may have been lost, but its memory is proof that renewal always follows ruin. Throughout the myths and traditions of the ancient world, one theme recurs with striking consistency: the memory of great catastrophes. Floods, fires, earthquakes, and storms are described not as isolated events, but as turning points in human history, reshaping civilizations and forcing humanity to begin anew. These stories, preserved across cultures, suggest that destruction was not random, but part of the cycles. Thoth recorded cycles of balance, collapse, and renewal. The flood myths are perhaps the most widespread. In Mesopotamia, the Epic of Gilgamesh tells of a deluge sent to cleanse the world, with only a chosen survivor carrying forward wisdom and tradition. In the Hebrew Bible, Noah's Ark preserves life through waters that erase corruption. In Hindu tradition, Manu is warned of a flood and guided by a divine fish to safety. Even in the Americas, indigenous peoples recount floods that destroyed earlier worlds, leaving survivors to rebuild. These stories, though separated by geography, echo one another, suggesting a shared memory of catastrophe. Earthquakes and volcanic eruptions also shaped myths. The eruption of Thera around 1600 BCE devastated the island of Santorini and may have inspired tales of Atlantis's destruction. In other regions, mountains were said to split, fire to rain from the sky, and lands to vanish beneath the sea. Such events were terrifying, but they also became symbols of renewal, reminders that civilizations must remain humble before the forces of nature. Thoth's role as the keeper of memory ensured that these catastrophes were not forgotten. He recorded them not simply as disasters, but as lessons. The Emerald Tablets hint that destruction was part of the cosmic rhythm, necessary for rebirth. To Thoth, catastrophe was not meaningless tragedy, but a reminder of the fragility of balance and the importance of preserving wisdom. The great catastrophes endure in myth because they reflect both fear and hope. They remind us that civilizations can be undone in an instant, yet they also show that life continues, that survivors carry forward memory, and that renewal always follows ruin. Atlantis itself, whether real or symbolic, fits into this pattern: a city undone by pride, remembered through story, and preserved as a lesson for future ages. In the ancient traditions attributed to Thoth, one theme stands out clearly: knowledge was never meant to vanish. Civilizations might crumble, temples might fall, and floods might erase entire cities, but wisdom was deliberately safeguarded. The ancients understood that memory was the most precious inheritance, and so they devised ways to preserve it across generations, ensuring that even in times of catastrophe, humanity would not lose its way. In Egypt, scribes were revered not simply as record keepers, but as guardians of truth. Every scroll, every inscription carved into stone, was a vessel of memory. Thoth, as the divine scribe, embodied this principle. He was said to have recorded the cycles of history, the rise and fall of civilizations, and the lessons learned from each age. His writings were not just chronicles, but reminders, designed to guide humanity through future challenges. Mesopotamian cultures followed a similar path. Clay tablets inscribed with cuneiform carried myths, laws, and astronomical observations. These tablets were durable, surviving long after cities were abandoned. The Epic of Gilgamesh, preserved in fragments, is a testament to this effort, a story that endured through millennia, carrying forward wisdom about mortality, pride, and renewal. In India, the oral tradition ensured that sacred texts like the Vedas were memorized and passed down with precision. Even when written records were scarce, the spoken word preserved spiritual wisdom across centuries. This emphasis on continuity reflected the belief that knowledge was eternal, and that humanity's role was to safeguard it through cycles of decline and rebirth. Why was knowledge preserved? Because the ancients recognized that wisdom was the only defense against repeating mistakes. Catastrophes might erase cities, but memory could prevent arrogance, restore balance, and guide renewal. Thoth's teachings suggest that civilizations before Atlantis understood this truth deeply. They encoded their wisdom in symbols, myths, and rituals, ensuring that even if their structures fell, their lessons would endure. Atlantis itself, whether real or symbolic, fits into this pattern. Its downfall was catastrophic, but its story survived. Through Plato's dialogues and Thoth's memory, Atlantis became more than a lost city. It became a lesson preserved for future generations. In the end, knowledge was preserved because it was sacred. It was the thread that connected past to present, ensuring that wisdom endured even when empires collapsed. To forget was to risk ruin. To remember was to carry forward the light of understanding. One of the most fascinating aspects of ancient wisdom is the way it was preserved through symbols. Civilizations before and after Atlantis often encoded their knowledge in texts that were not meant to be read literally, but interpreted carefully, layer by layer. According to traditions linked to Thoth, symbols were the language of eternity, a way of protecting wisdom from corruption, while ensuring it could survive across ages. Egyptian hieroglyphs are a prime example. At first glance, they appear to be simple pictures, but each symbol carried multiple meanings. A bird might represent not only the creature itself, but also ideas of flight, spirit, or divine presence. Temples were covered in inscriptions that blended history, myth, and philosophy, creating texts that required patience and insight to understand. Thoth, as the god of writing, was believed to have designed this symbolic system, ensuring that truth could be preserved, even if its surface meaning was misunderstood. In Mesopotamia, myths like the Epic of Gilgamesh carried symbolic messages about mortality, pride, and renewal. The flood story, for instance, was not only a memory of catastrophe, but a metaphor for cleansing and rebirth. By encoding wisdom in narrative, the ancients ensured that lessons would endure even when details faded. Indian traditions also relied heavily on symbolism. The Vedas and later texts used allegory to describe cosmic truths, with rituals and myths serving as metaphors for deeper spiritual realities. The concept of Yuga's vast cycles of ages was itself symbolic, reminding humanity that decline and renewal were part of the eternal rhythm. Symbols protected wisdom by making it accessible only to those who sought it earnestly. A casual reader might see only stories, while a seeker would uncover layers of meaning. This duality ensured that knowledge was preserved without being misused, hidden in plain sight, yet available to those prepared to understand. For Thoth, symbolic messages were essential. He recorded truths in ways that could survive catastrophe, ensuring that even if civilizations fell, their wisdom would endure. Atlantis itself, whether real or symbolic, fits into this tradition. Its story is not only about a lost city, but about pride, balance, and the cycles of history, lessons encoded in myth so they would never be forgotten. In the end, symbolic messages remind us that wisdom often hides beneath the surface. To read ancient texts is to enter a dialogue with eternity, uncovering truths that remain as relevant today as they were thousands of years ago. Among the most intriguing ideas in ancient traditions is the notion that great civilizations existed long before the floods described in myth. These so-called pre-flood or antediluvian societies are said to have flourished with wisdom, technology, and spiritual insight that rivaled or even surpassed later cultures. According to interpretations of Thoth's teachings, these civilizations were not only real, but deliberately remembered so humanity would not forget the lessons of balance and renewal. In Mesopotamia, the Sumerians recorded lists of kings who ruled for thousands of years before the Great Flood. These antediluvian rulers were described as semi-divine, living in harmony with cosmic rhythms. Their reigns ended when the flood swept across the land, erasing much of their world but leaving fragments of memory preserved in clay tablets. The flood was not seen as random, but as part of the cycle of destruction and renewal. Egyptian traditions also spoke of ages before the reign of mortal kings. Priests described epochs ruled by gods and demigods, stretching back thousands of years. These ages were marked by harmony and wisdom, with Thoth himself recording their deeds so they would not vanish. The emerald tablets hint at civilizations that existed before Atlantis, societies that possessed knowledge of the stars and spiritual truths now forgotten. In India, the concept of Yugas reflects similar ideas. Humanity was said to pass through vast cycles of ages, with golden eras of wisdom preceding darker times of decline. Floods and catastrophes marked the transitions between ages, erasing civilizations but ensuring that renewal would follow. Even in the Americas, indigenous traditions describe worlds destroyed by floods or fires, with survivors carrying forward fragments of wisdom. These stories, though separated by geography, share a common theme. Civilizations existed before the ones we know, and their memory lingers in myth. Pre-flood civilization theories challenge our understanding of history. They suggest that human achievement stretches back far beyond recorded time, into ages where myth and memory intertwine. Whether literal or symbolic, these stories remind us that wisdom is eternal, surviving catastrophe and guiding humanity through cycles of rise and fall. Atlantis, in this framework, was not the first great civilization, but part of a much older story. Its downfall fits into the rhythm of destruction and renewal, echoing the fate of pre-flood societies remembered by Thoth and preserved in traditions across the world. The story of Atlantis and the civilizations said to have existed before it sits at the crossroads of myth and interpretation. On one hand, we have the vivid accounts of Plato, the symbolic writings attributed to Thoth, and the flood traditions echoed across cultures. On the other hand, we have centuries of scholars, seekers, and skeptics debating whether these stories are literal history or allegory designed to teach timeless lessons. Myth, by its nature, is layered. It carries fragments of memory, cultural identity, and spiritual truth, often wrapped in symbolism. The flood myths of Mesopotamia, India, and the Americas may preserve echoes of real catastrophes, yet they also serve as metaphors for renewal and cleansing. Atlantis itself may have been a memory of a lost city, or it may have been Plato's allegory for pride and imbalance. Myths endure because they speak to universal human experiences, regardless of whether they are historically precise. Interpretation, however, is what keeps these myths alive. Each generation reads them anew, finding meaning that resonates with its own time. For some, Atlantis is a cautionary tale about arrogance and downfall. For others, it is evidence of forgotten civilizations, proof that human history stretches back further than we imagine. Scholars analyze texts for historical clues, while mystics explore their symbolic depth. The tension between literal and metaphorical readings ensures that the story never fades. Thoth's role as the keeper of memory adds another dimension. His writings, often symbolic, suggest that wisdom was deliberately encoded to survive catastrophe. The Emerald Tablets, for instance, are filled with allegories that can be read as spiritual truths or as hints of forgotten ages. This duality reflects the nature of myth itself, truths hidden in symbols, waiting for interpretation. The debate between myth and interpretation is not about proving one side right. It is about recognizing that myths carry meaning whether or not they are literal. Atlantis may never be found beneath the sea, yet its story continues to inspire reflection on pride, balance, and renewal. The civilizations before Atlantis may remain hidden, but their memory survives in traditions that remind us of humanity's fragility and resilience. In the end, myth and interpretation are partners. Myth preserves memory. Interpretation keeps it alive. Together, they ensure that stories like Atlantis remain timeless, guiding humanity through cycles of rise and fall, truth and mystery. Across cultures and continents, traditions carry echoes of memories far older than written history. These ancient memories are preserved not in libraries or archives, but in myths, rituals, and oral storytelling passed down through generations. They are fragments of civilizations long vanished, woven into the fabric of culture, so that wisdom might endure even when cities crumble. In Egypt, priests spoke of epochs ruled by gods and demigods before the reign of mortal kings. These traditions suggested that humanity once lived in closer harmony with the divine, guided by figures like Thoth who recorded their deeds. Even when temples fell and dynasties ended, the memory of these ages survived in ritual and myth, reminding later generations of the cycles of rise and fall. Mesopotamian traditions preserved similar memories. The Sumerian king list describes rulers who reigned for thousands of years before the Great Flood. Though historians debate its literal meaning, the text reflects a cultural memory of civilizations that existed before catastrophe reshaped the world. Myths like the Epic of Gilgamesh, carried forward lessons about mortality, pride, and renewal, ensuring that wisdom survived even when empires faded. In India, oral traditions safeguarded the Vedas and stories of vast cosmic cycles. The concept of yugas, golden ages followed by decline, reflects a memory of civilizations rising and falling in rhythm with the cosmos. These traditions remind humanity that decline is not final, that renewal always follows destruction, and that wisdom is eternal. Indigenous cultures across the Americas also preserved ancient memories in traditions. Flood myths, tales of worlds destroyed by fire or earthquakes, and stories of survivors carrying wisdom into new ages all reflect echoes of forgotten civilizations. Though separated by geography, these traditions share themes of catastrophe, survival, and renewal, suggesting a universal memory of cycles. Thoth's role as the keeper of memory ties these traditions together. His teachings suggest that wisdom was deliberately preserved in symbols and stories so that humanity would not lose its way. Ancient memories and tradition are not simply tales. They are lessons encoded in myth, reminders of fragility and resilience, and guides for future generations. In the end, traditions are more than cultural heritage. They are vessels of memory, carrying fragments of civilizations long gone, ensuring that wisdom endures even when history fades. Atlantis may be lost, but its echoes, like those of countless other civilizations, live on in the traditions that continue to shape our imagination. The myths of Atlantis, the teachings of Thoth, and the traditions of ancient civilizations are more than fragments of forgotten history. They are living stories that continue to shape how we see ourselves and our place in the world. Whether taken literally or symbolically, these narratives matter because they preserve wisdom, warn against arrogance, and remind us of humanity's resilience in the face of catastrophe. First, these stories matter because they carry memory. Civilizations rise and fall, but their lessons endure through myth and tradition. Flood narratives, tales of destruction, and accounts of renewal remind us that humanity has always faced cycles of challenge and rebirth. By preserving these memories, cultures ensured that future generations would not forget the fragility of balance or the importance of harmony with nature and the cosmos. Second, they matter because they teach. Atlantis, whether real or allegorical, is a cautionary tale about pride and imbalance. The flood myths of Mesopotamia and India remind us of humility before forces greater than ourselves. The symbolic writings attributed to Thoth emphasize that wisdom must be preserved even when civilizations collapse. These lessons are timeless, guiding us not only in understanding the past, but in navigating the present. Third, these stories matter because they connect us across continents. Cultures, separated by geography and language, share strikingly similar traditions: floods, golden ages, cycles of decline and renewal. This universality suggests that humanity carries a shared memory, a collective wisdom that transcends borders. In this way, myths become bridges, linking us to one another and to the deeper rhythms of existence. Finally, they matter because they inspire. The idea that civilizations before Atlantis may have possessed profound wisdom challenges us to look beyond the limits of recorded history. It invites us to imagine possibilities, to seek hidden truths, and to recognize that human potential stretches far deeper than we often realize. In the end, these stories matter because they are not just about the past, they are about us. They remind us that wisdom is eternal, that balance is essential, and that renewal always follows destruction. Atlantis may be lost, but its story endures, guiding humanity through cycles of rise and fall, memory and meaning. The stories of Atlantis, the teachings of Thoth, and the traditions of ancient civilizations are not simply echoes of the past. They are lessons meant to guide humanity through the present and into the future. Whether these accounts are taken as literal history or symbolic allegory, they carry truths about balance, resilience, and the eternal cycles of rise and fall. One of the most important lessons is the fragility of civilization. Atlantis, whether real or imagined, serves as a reminder that even the most advanced societies can collapse when pride and imbalance take hold. Ancient flood myths echo this theme, showing that catastrophe can erase entire worlds in an instant. The lesson is clear: progress without humility is unsustainable. Another lesson is the importance of preserving wisdom. Thoth's role as the keeper of memory emphasizes that knowledge must endure, even when cities fall. Civilizations across Egypt, Mesopotamia, India, and the Americas encoded their wisdom in myths, rituals, and texts so that future generations could learn from their experiences. For humanity today, this underscores the need to safeguard knowledge, not only through technology, but through values and traditions that remind us of our deeper purpose. A third lesson is the necessity of balance with nature and the cosmos. Ancient cultures aligned their lives with the stars, the seasons, and the rhythms of the earth. They understood that harmony was essential for survival. Atlantis's downfall, in many interpretations, came from losing this balance. For modern humanity, the lesson is urgent: to live in harmony with the planet, respecting its limits and cycles, rather than exploiting them recklessly. Finally, these stories teach the power of renewal. Catastrophe is never the end. It is part of the cycle. Floods, fires, and collapses clear the way for rebirth. Survivors carry forward memory, ensuring that wisdom is not lost. This resilience is a lesson for humanity in times of crisis. Destruction may come, but renewal always follows. In the end, the lessons for humanity are timeless. Be humble in progress, preserve wisdom, live in balance, and trust in renewal. Atlantis may be gone, but its story, like the traditions of countless civilizations, continues to guide us. These lessons remind us that while empires may fall, humanity's journey endures, shaped by memory and the eternal rhythm of rise and renewal. Despite centuries of study, debate, and imagination, Atlantis and the civilizations said to have existed before it remained shrouded in mystery. Myths, traditions, and symbolic texts offer tantalizing glimpses, yet none provide definitive proof. This uncertainty is precisely what makes the story endure. It is a puzzle that invites humanity to keep searching, questioning, and imagining. The mystery begins with Plato's account. Was Atlantis a real city destroyed by catastrophe, or an allegory designed to warn against pride and imbalance? Scholars have argued both sides for generations, and the lack of evidence ensures that the debate continues. Similarly, Thoth's writings, filled with symbols and allegories, hint at forgotten ages but never reveal them plainly. The ambiguity forces readers to interpret, to seek meaning beyond the surface. Archaeology has uncovered ruins of advanced civilizations: the Indus Valley, the Maya, the Minoans, yet none match Atlantis exactly. Flood myths from Mesopotamia, India, and the Americas suggest shared memories of catastrophe. But whether they point to a single lost civilization or multiple forgotten worlds remains unresolved. Each discovery adds pieces to the puzzle, but never completes it. The mystery also lies in the universality of these stories. How did cultures separated by oceans and centuries preserve such similar traditions of floods, golden ages, and cycles of destruction and renewal? Is this evidence of a shared human memory, or simply the natural tendency of societies to explain catastrophe through myth? The answer remains elusive. For Thoth, mystery was not a flaw but a feature. By encoding wisdom in symbols, he ensured that truth would survive, but only be uncovered by those who sought it earnestly. The emerald tablets, like the story of Atlantis, are not straightforward records, but layered texts designed to challenge and inspire. Ultimately, the mystery that remains is what keeps these stories alive. If Atlantis were proven beyond doubt, it might lose its power as a symbol. Instead, its uncertainty allows it to be both history and allegory, cautionary tale and inspiration. The mystery invites us to reflect on our own civilizations, our fragility, and our resilience. In the end, Atlantis endures not because we know it existed, but because we cannot stop wondering. The mystery itself is the lesson, a reminder that truth is often hidden, waiting to be sought, and that humanity's journey is as much about questions as it is about answers. As we reach the end of this journey through Atlantis, Thoth's wisdom, and the echoes of civilizations lost to time, one truth becomes clear. These stories endure because they speak to something timeless within us. Whether Atlantis was a real city swallowed by the sea, or a symbolic tale crafted to warn against pride, its memory continues to inspire reflection on humanity's fragility, resilience, and endless search for meaning. The lessons we've uncovered, balance with nature, humility in progress, preservation of wisdom, and trust in renewal, are not locked in the past. They are as relevant today as they were thousands of years ago. Ancient myths remind us that civilizations rise and fall, but memory survives, guiding us through cycles of destruction and rebirth. Thoth's role as the keeper of memory symbolizes this eternal truth. Wisdom must be carried forward, even when empires crumble. Atlantis, then, is more than a lost city. It is a mirror, reflecting both our potential and our vulnerability. It challenges us to imagine what might have been, while reminding us to live wisely in the present. The flood myths, the cosmic cycles, the symbolic texts, all are threads in a tapestry that connects humanity across ages, cultures, and continents. And so, as we close this chapter, the mystery remains. Atlantis may never be found, yet its story continues to live in our imagination. Perhaps that is the point. The search itself is the lesson, urging us to seek truth, preserve wisdom, and walk in balance with the cosmos. Now, the journey quiets. The towers of Atlantis fade into the mist. The stars above continue their eternal rhythm, and the ancient voices grow still. The story rests, waiting for another dawn, another seeker, another cycle. It is time to set the book aside, let the mind drift, and allow the lessons to settle gently into memory. Atlantis is gone, but its wisdom endures, carried forward in story, in tradition, and in the quiet reflections of those who listen. Good night.